I'll move on from Pete to talk about another legendary coach. The news coming out today that this one is a little bit more expected. There's been rumors about it all season long, but after what is it, 23 years, Bill Belichick
24.
is no longer. Is it 24 now? Yeah, sure. I guess
Yeah.
2024. Hired in 2000. No longer the coach of the Patriots.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's really good defense. If he had a quarterback, Patriots, I mean, maybe they were a playoff level. I mean, they had a playoff level defense, didn't have a playoff level offense. And, you know, for Bill, it's interesting what the winning situation he'll go to is because he's 15 wins behind Dan Shula for the all-time win record for the coaching record. So, you know, he wants that. I don't think he's obviously not going to settle now. Obviously, the Falcons have been thrown around as the favorite for him. But he'll be watching that Bucks and that Philly game very, very closely. All I'll say is this for the Belichick and for the position, there's a spot that no one's talking about. I want to talk about really quick, and then I'll get back to you, Caleb. What can you say though? He did everything you needed from him. Just a great career. He's now also with the Dan Shula thing. He's also got to get one over Brady because it's kind of like the Kobe and Shaq. Right now, Brady's winning the divorce right now, so he has to go over that. But it was time. Patriots are ready for a clean sweep. It seems like Jared Mayo will be going there. If McDaniels goes back to the OC position there, or if he follows Belichick, who knows? Obviously, people know me as a Raider fan, not a big McDaniels fan for obvious reasons. But the one position I look at for Belichick is what is Shad Khan and the Jaguars doing? Fire Doug Peterson and throw everything at Bill Belichick. We know the Khans have money from how Tony Khan spends money in AEW. Go and get Bill Belichick to have a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence that has not had the right development that we've seen. And yeah, it'd be another coach. It'd be his third coach in 4 years or whatever after going through the Urban Meyer experience. But you really should take the opportunity to get a guy like Belichick in South Florida. I'm sure that'd be a great spot. He'd love to retire. I'm just surprised more people haven't talked about the Jags as the spot. It's been Falcons. And we know Arthur Smith is going to be aggressive and try to go after him. But I don't know why the Jags aren't a spot that Belichick would look at.
That's really interesting. I mean, with the Doug Peterson stuff, it's kind of interesting, especially because you wouldn't think that we'd be having this conversation after their first, whatever it was, 9 games, where they're 6-3 and things are looking good, and it looks like they're continuing in the momentum from last season. But things really did fall apart for them. And I think that it's definitely an interesting scenario to think about in terms of putting Belichick down there with a young established quarterback like Trevor Lawrence. So I think that definitely is an interesting possibility that is probably not getting talked about as much just because that move to fire Peterson hasn't happened yet. But I think in terms of the talk about him going to the Falcons, I don't know if that's a fit I necessarily love.
Not with the quarterback right now.
Yeah, because I think for Belichick is the ultimate defensive guy. That's the part of this 4-13 Patriots team that was any good, like you mentioned. He's going to, with Bill Belichick, you're going to have a fantastic defense. That's what he's there to coach. And I think part of the reason the Brady-Belichick marriage worked so well is because when Belichick can handle the defense, you get Brady onto that offense and he can run the show. Because as we've kind of seen after he left, and some of the conversations the players have had, like players were playing for Brady and that side of the ball. So I think you kind of have to have that side of the ball, especially the quarterback, like you said, figured out, which is why Atlanta doesn't feel right, because their offense is completely in shambles after how Arthur Smith mishandled it. So I'm looking more, I don't know what your thoughts about this are, Josh, but the Chargers are kind of my number one spot for Belichick, because I'm looking at pairing him with Herbert. And I know some of the offensive weapons quite aren't as good as they potentially used to be with Keenan Allen getting older, Mike Williams injury concerns and everything. But I think that defense has a lot of pieces that Belichick can use to potentially elevate them, because that team has so much talent. It's just about they're not being utilized right. And you can see how that was mishandled under a guy like Staley. I think if you bring in Belichick for that, who knows what can happen.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, they're in the Harbaugh sweepstakes as well. My only problem with the Chargers is, like you mentioned, there's a few broken pieces on the offensive side. Austin Eckler's probably going to leave. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen always injury risk. Did they have a high pick? They could go for a guy like Neighbors or O'Tunes and take another rookie receiver. I mean, they took Quentin Johnson last year and it didn't work out for them. The only problem with the Chargers is they're over the cap hard. Like they have a lot of salary and they got to shed salary. And unfortunately for them, it comes from the defensive side. And it comes from cutting the guys like Khalil Mack or Derwin James. Now, maybe if you get a Belichick, you rethink that. Because you do have the quarterback there that you can do it with. And you can reconfigure things. My only thing is with the Chargers, and I kind of talked about this in the show earlier, I'm almost wondering if they should just scorch earth in a way, just get a young-minded coach like a Ben Johnson or something and get rid of those heavy contracts, get another young receiver in there and just kind of reset. And if it works, then it works. But again, Belichick going to a sunnier location makes sense. The Chargers are obviously, they're going to wait for Harbaugh, and that's going to kind of be first and foremost. But
and I was going to say on that one as well.
Yeah,
I was going to say on that one as well, most of the Chargers fans I have talked to are very high on Harbaugh. I think that's the person they really, really want. That's the big rumor I keep hearing over and over and over, is that they really, really want to wait out for Harbaugh. Even though, at least to my knowledge, it's still up in the air whether he wants to come to the NFL and if he wants to leave Michigan. But I think that's a really interesting one. I was about to ask what you guys think on potentially Harbaugh even going to the Chargers if we want to move there.
I mean, there seems to be two teams from Harbaugh. It's Vegas and it's the Chargers. And I don't think there's any in between for those two teams. We'll talk about Vegas in a bit because obviously I'm a little more close to that situation. But he already has a quarterback set, ready to go there, and he's been good with quarterbacks. And he's been good on they have all the weapons there. Kind of the same with Belichick, right? These are two high-level coaches, kind of like what Caleb was talking about, that could take a team that have pieces and make them work.
Yeah, and I think either way the Chargers go, like I think if you go Harbaugh or if you go Belichick, like I think either way you're going to be good, because I think Harbaugh is a fantastic coach, and he's proved that again and again because he's done it at both levels, right? He's coached that Niners team, and you saw what happened to them after they let Harbaugh go, where they just completely crashed and burned to the ground before Shanahan kind of brought them back up to relevance again. And then seeing what he's done with Michigan, again, a program that wasn't quite the same level in the past, finally bringing them back to a national championship. Like, he can do that same kind of thing for the Chargers. And I think something you were talking about, Josh, in terms of the Chargers, like scorching earth and just kind of starting over. Well, I do think I'm generally like in favor of that for most teams, because I think holding on to the idea of what you wanted your team to be for too long is never a good idea. But I think for the Chargers, you almost can't afford to do that just because of Justin Herbert. You only have so many good years of him, right? Like, when you get a guy like that, you have to capitalize on that. And I'm thinking of the Chargers as almost like a complete reclamation project, because again, I look at that talent, and you're right, you're going to have to shed some of it because of cap problems. But we've seen what smart GMs can do with cap problems. They can try to retain as much as they can.
They got to get the GM first. It's
true. They've got to find that smart GM too.
And it can't be Belichick, by the way. The GM can't be Belichick. He just have him as a coach. Should be. I think we're both on that same page, Caleb. He's just coaching. No GM Belichick.
Because that has led to complete disaster for New England, and I think that's a big part of the reason why he's not there anymore, because of just how terrible he has been at building that team. He's fantastic at coaching it, but in terms of building it, and especially in the draft, that receiving room is like terrible for so long.
Name me an offensive player that he's drafted that's good other than Gronkowski.
Do you think Bill Belichick is going to want just a coaching role, or do you think he's looking for coach and GM again?
He wants to be Dan Shula and then maybe try to get that Super Bowl ring to Ty Brady. I think that's the more important thing to him right now.
Yeah, and I think for him, it's definitely, if you're Bill Belichick, for as confident as you probably have to be in yourself at this point for being probably the best coach in NFL history, you also kind of have to realize all the noise that's been around his GM aspect of the role. Like, it's been well known for a while that that's not his strength. So I wouldn't be shocked if he was okay giving that up.